Today's episode is special. We're not going to share with you how to run faster or strategize your race. Instead, we're going to tell you the story of a friend who has taken endurance spirit beyond sports. If I name the following things, number one, being a pediatrician whose research is funded by NIH. Number two, running 100-mile ultra and race Ironman races. Number three, having 2 young kids, with the elder one diagnosed with autism. And number four, bootstrap a kitchen table idea to an internationally recognized nonprofit. It is hard to imagine anybody does just one of this right. But today's guest, she does them all. I'm so proud to call her friend, and I'm so proud we have her here in Birmingham, Alabama. Hey friends, welcome back to Miawana Endurance Podcast, a show that shares stories, celebrates successes, and learn lessons from everything endurance sports. I am a runner, a triathlete, and your host for the show. Today's guest, you probably have already guessed it, is Dr. Michele Kong of KultureCity. She's a pediatrician and professor in UAB. She and her husband, Dr. Julian Maha, started KultureCity, a nonprofit that is dedicated to sensory inclusion for people with invisible disabilities. I am so pumped to have her as my guest today. How are we doing, Michele?
I'm great. Thank you so much for this lovely opportunity. It's wonderful being able to sit with you this morning.
I have to tell you that I have this pinch me moment because I have known Michele since 2023 for a little bit over 2 years. We've run a few times together. But I want to say that most people from the running community kind of admire you from afar, including me, because we all know you built this really influential and incredible organization that is called KultureCity. But we don't really know Michele's personal story. So when I started this podcast, Michele's name was among the top of the people I wanted to talk to. I wanted to share the story. I wanted to have more people stand next to you to build this organization. So that's kind of like the reason that I reached out. Cannot believe when I reached out to you, you said yes almost immediately. So I wanted to take our listeners to the very, very beginning.
Sure.
Because you grew up in Malaysia, the island of Borneo.
Yes.
What was it like growing up in Malaysia?
I had a really good childhood, I think. I was very fortunate to have wonderful parents. My mom and dad, they were incredible people, champions, very positive, and I have a wonderful sister. And so it really was just the 4 of us. Both my parents were educators. My dad was a principal, and he started vocational schools. And so I think from a very young age, I learned the principles of building and seeing the impact that it can have on one person and the community. I think the one thing that I never really had, though, because we move so much, is I don't have childhood friends. But at the same time, I have a lot of friends in the sense that at every stage of my life, I've somehow from a very young stage, learned the skills of just connecting with people and loving their stories and who they are and where they're from and how to be connected with them. So I'm very blessed. I have a wonderful childhood. We were very poor growing up. We didn't have resources necessarily, but it was all very sufficient. And I'm thankful for it.
So I done a lot of reading about you. There was a story mentioned. There was young Michele take a shovel and defended the family from a python.
Oh gosh, you read that story? Where did you even read that?
Is that true?
Yes. I am so surprised. So the context is it's actually a cobra.
Okay.
A cobra, which is just as bad. But the context of that is that we have a house that is right by a huge lake. And so Malaysia is pretty warm. And so because the house is a little bit cooler, you can have it's so common to see like baby snakes in the house
Uh-huh.
or like bigger snakes like on the outside and they sort of coil on the outside because it's cool in the house but warm outside. And so I don't know that I protected anybody, but it's actually quite funny. So there were three of us there. And then we saw this ginormous snake. And so it was me, my sister, and my cousin. One of us had like a rake, and the other had like a insect spray. And so one was on the bed, and one was with the spray to stun the snake. And then I was the one with the shovel
shovel.
thing, and I
Gosh.
whacked the snake on the head. But it was just fun.
That shows
It was pretty scary, but it was a crazy time.
I was thinking to myself, like, that must be a baby snake because I could not imagine the.
No, it was a big one. It was not a baby snake.
You know, I actually tried to validate this story before I bring it to the show. I asked a few of your friends. I asked
That's
Jason
hilarious.
Smith, Alison Hoover,
my
and
gosh.
Sean Lim. I
Yeah.
said, have you heard about that Michelle killed the snake? They were all laughing in the story. They were like, but that we've never heard her mention this, but I can totally imagine she does that.
No, it was a true story. It really did happen.
I'm so glad that we made you share that story a little bit more at this podcast. So growing up in Malaysia,
Yeah.
who really instilled that seed of service in you? Was there a particular instance that made an impression on you? Because you right now dedicate so much to service.
I think my parents. We were in a fishing village, and growing up in that sort of environment, you get exposed to a lot of families and kids who the only breakfast they get is when they come to school. The only time that they get any sort of love sometimes is also when they come to school. And so I really saw the importance of family, one, and then also two, community, in how we're not one unless we're all. And I really saw the value that they brought. And as a child, it was more just as my friends. And so I think the direct answer to your question would have to be my parents. I saw how they serve in their own capacity. My dad as a principal and my mom as an English teacher in a Malay school.
And I kind of take the listeners a little bit fast forward to your journey coming to the States. You and your husband, Julian, met in a very serendipitous way on the same flight.
Yes.
The same program in Canada.
Yes.
And then after medical school, you came to University of Mississippi for the residence program, and then UAB, the Children's of Alabama, for the fellowship, and then hired as a faculty after the fellowship. So as an immigrant, was the immigration process a smooth sail, or was there a point of the time that kind of planted the seed of inclusion in you?
It's been a very up and down sort of journey. And so we indeed did meet on a plane, and it was really interesting because I was never supposed to be in the United States. My plan was always to get done with medical school and then go to England. In fact, I had taken the exam to go to England, and never in my mind the thought of residency or even any sort of training in the United States. And so, but because we met on the plane and Julian's from Montgomery, that sort of changed the trajectory entirely. And I shared this with a lot of love in that, talking about an immigrant coming to the South, it's so funny because when I first came here, the language and the words used were so different, and the way that it was said was so different that even though I was speaking English, I felt a little bit out of place because I was like, what are you saying? I don't understand it. Or even the food. So it's one clear story that comes to mind is I was in the emergency room actually as an intern, and the chief complaint was risen, R-I-S-E-N. And I was like, what is this word? I don't understand this word. But I didn't necessarily want to ask anybody because I'm a first year, and then I don't want to appear like I don't know anything. I mean, I don't know anything, but at the same time, I don't want to show that I don't know anything. And so I looked into the dictionary. I'm like, this word doesn't exist. I don't know what this word means. And then, so I said, you know what? I'm just going to go in. I'm just going to ask, how can I help you? What's wrong? And so this dad showed me the child's arm, and it was an abscess. So it was rising. And so risen, RISEN, meant abscess. And so I was like, aha. And so it was really, I think, as somebody new coming into this culture, it was learning a lot of that in terms of just the language, the way that people say things, and the food. I remember the first time I went to a restaurant, and it was a Southern restaurant. And so everything was fried. The fried, like literally everything was fried. The fried chicken, it was fried tomatoes, fried pickles. And coming from Canada before and Malaysia and going to England, the food is very different, right? I'm used to like hot tea. I'm not used to cold tea. I'm used to biscuit being a cookie, not a muffin looking thing.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of sort of adjustment that way. But I have to say, after all these years, I've fallen in love with it so much and so hard. And to the point that I caught myself driving 4 hours to Jackson, Mississippi, back to Brandon to find fried chicken in a restaurant that I love because I went there all the time as an intern. So I've gone all the way from, oh my gosh, why is everything so different, to how do I have ever lived without all this fried chicken and this amazing food and people? And so, we've been here 20 years now in Birmingham, and I have to say, Birmingham really has become home.
Yeah.
And we've grown our roots here. Our boys are both born here, and we're proud to call it our home. We love it here.
Yeah. Mental notes taken that Michelle loves fried chicken.
Yes.
In the future, you might have to throw a party for Michelle. I know what to bring.
Yes, fried chicken.
So I'm going to take the listener to 2012. You were a young researcher at UAB, and you were establishing your career. You had your older son Abram diagnosed with autism. Tell us back to that moment. What was going through in your life, and how did that eventually prompt you to start KultureCity?
That was a really hard time. I think because I was a junior faculty, so I was trying to establish myself in terms of figuring out who I am as a physician.
Yeah.
If I was going to be a clinician or a physician scientist, learning how to establish my own lab and research portfolio, and being a young mom with a first child. And so Abram, when he was born, he was meeting all his milestones. And so we weren't concerned at all. It was the three of us. We did everything together.
Yeah.
We were always like the three little musketeers. We went everywhere together. We did everything together. We had great family support. My parents would always come and stay with us every 6 months. And so everything was really, what I thought it would be. And then when he was around 2, I don't know that we know exactly still what it was, but whatever it was, it seems like it was overnight, where he just suddenly stopped talking. He lost all his words. He started regressing, where he didn't want to be held or touched, and had really rough time, especially with sleeping. And it was hard. It was hard because we were trying to just figuring out what it was. I'll never forget the drive home. We ultimately got a diagnosis outside of Birmingham, and we're told in a tiny little room, after a whole long day of evaluation, that he will never amount to anything. He will never talk again, and he would not say, I love you, and we should just be ready for that. To be told something like that, it changes everything, right? We were like, what? What just happened? I'll never forget the drive home, and, we were both driving and processing what was going on, what had just happened. And we were both in it was a very hard place to be in, but I'll never forget this moment though, when I turned back and I saw Abram, and I was like, you are no different than the child that we came with 12 hours ago. The only difference now, and he was just kind of happy and smiling, and he was enjoying the car ride because he loves car rides, and he still does. And I was like, there's nothing different about you except that someone just said these are all the things that you cannot do. And immediately I looked back at Julian and we looked at each other and we realized that nothing's changed. The only thing that's changed is that someone gave him a label. And so from there on out, we made it a point and always our focus in that it was always about the child, and it could be about Abram or any other child that we encounter, or family for that matter. And we needed to see them for who they are at that moment and allowing them to have the opportunities and the skills to be the best version of themselves. Because otherwise, it's a self fulfilling prophecy in the sense that if you said, well, you cannot do anything, and therefore I never teach you anything, well, guess what? 20 years later, you don't know how to do anything because I never taught you, and neither did I ever give you the opportunity to do anything or learn anything. And so it was a hard time, but at the same time, it was a very important, critical phase of our life because I think it changed us. It just certainly changed me to be better and to be much more open and to see what was going on around me.
It is almost from like that mother's mission to something that even serving a broader community. How did that happen? How did you connect your personal story to starting a nonprofit that's helping a much bigger community?
I think there were a couple of things. The first thing was that from a personal standpoint, when we were navigating this journey with Abram, we realized that it wasn't enough just to change our own mindset because we had to change our own mindset and our own perspective. It wasn't enough to change even the mindset and the way that our family regarded disability and how to navigate disability within the family unit. If we truly wanted to change the culture of where Abram lived, the culture of the community in our world needed to change. And so that meant we had to look beyond our own family.
Yeah.
And I think the key to that also was realizing that it was very interesting because once you see, it's hard to unsee. You know, when before Abram was diagnosed and before we started navigating it with him and his brother Judah, we were fairly insulated in that we were both physicians. We had we had a house, we had a car. We had no real needs in terms of, you know, if we wanted to go to a restaurant, we could go to a restaurant. We could go to a game. We didn't really see as physicians. Of course, I know about autism. Of course, I know about dementia and PTSD, but I never saw it in a real way because I knew it from a objective sort of a doctor way, right? But I never experienced it in a really deep personal way as I did with Abram and our family. But once you do and you see it, it's hard to unsee. And what we saw actually, and there were a couple of, I think, sentinel moments. You know, one was probably another family that we encountered with, and we saw us in them, where they were really struggling and their child was going through similar things that Abram was going through, but even more magnified because he had other comorbidities. And so we started seeing, like, in the community, you know, it really doesn't matter if you're a 4-year-old, if you're a 10-year-old, if you're a 27-year-old, if you're an 80-year-old, if you have any sort of disability that's invisible to the eye, it is very difficult for community to understand because one, it's invisible. And then two, the key to it is that when you have such a challenge, it can become a real access to what our community offers. You know, when you think about, for instance, a physical disability, immediately your mind, because you can see it, you can say, oh, it's an access problem, right? Because you have a wheelchair, you cannot come up those steps. You need a ramp, or you need to go through an elevator, or you need railings. So immediately we can be primed to see access is a problem. But when you have an invisible disability, unless you really understand it, we sometimes fail to remember that, wait a minute, if it's someone who's really overwhelmed because the environment is so overstimulating and people don't understand them, because they communicate in a different way and people don't understand them. They judge and they stare and they comment, maybe unintentionally. Then the family feels like, oh, I don't belong here, right? I don't want to come anymore because I feel out of place.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a place for me. So you stop coming. And when you stop coming, you don't get to participate in whatever the community is offering. And so that becomes a real access issue. And so that became ultimately, the mission behind Culture City is how do we change our community so that access is for all? Because behind access is opportunity. And behind opportunity is the chance to be who we can be.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do.
Yeah, inclusion really make the whole society better. Not
Yeah.
just serve the people who are now included, but also everybody who's
Yes.
in the society. I love that. But when you started Culture City, is it 2013, 2014? When you started Culture City, did people see your mission, see your vision right away and staying behind you? Or at the beginning, in the early days, there was a struggle to start this nonprofit?
I think in the early days, it was really more about us also having clarity in what we want to do. As you know, when you have such a big problem, it's like, I want to cure cancer. Well, that's such a big statement. How do you cure cancer, right? It's like saying, well, I want to change our world so that everyone's included. That's such a big statement. How do you do that?
Right.
And so I think for us in our early years was really also finding clarity between the two of us and what we truly wanted to do with Culture City. And we were very fortunate that we were surrounded by a group of people who understood it and saw it. And so when we started Culture City, we did it a little bit different in that we were very intentional to know, one, what our mission was and what we wanted to do, but immediately following that was what it is that we wanted to offer to the community and what services and programs and platforms that we want to offer. And we were able to then go back to our really tight circle of friends and people who supported us and said, okay, this is how much we need to fund this program and to fund the services. And so we really had a mindset that was different in that we approach it like a business, right? We didn't want to start a nonprofit that immediately started because you need money to fund services and programs that you were very focused on fundraising, but everything had to be about a fundraiser to fundraise for the programs and services. We didn't do that. We wanted the impact to speak for itself. So when we first started, we were immediately able to start offering services and programs and things like that. And then the impact was what then we used to go to our funders, to go to our supporters, to go to our sponsors and say, oh my gosh, look, this is the number of people that you're serving.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Help us do it more. Because now they can see the impact, right? And they can see where the funds are going.
Yeah.
And we're also very lean. We're still very lean. And that's also very intentional in that we made sure that, almost 100% of our funds that we raise via philanthropy goes directly into the services and into the programs.
To make that real impact.
Yes.
And you did mention at the very beginning you struggled to figure out what would be the most impactful service. Was there a pivotal moment in terms of that idea come along, like I think this is going to be, now I know that Culture City have this in different venues, have this inclusion room, right?
Yes.
You have a packet
Yes.
to give to people who
Yes.
have special needs. How did this come along? Was there a pivotal moment in your history that made you conceive this idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think rather than a pivotal moment, I think the thing that probably anchors that question the most is the fact that the way we've always done Culture City is that we always go with where the need is or where the gap is. We don't come in and say, we must do X. We're going to do Y. We have a broad idea. It always has to be about accessibility and about inclusion and about acceptance and opportunity for individuals with disability. That one doesn't change, right? That one is set in stone. But how we go through the next program or how we go through the next innovation is really driven by need. I'll give you an example. So we in in about 2 years ago. So we were in our 8th year of Culture City, and in all the things that we have been doing and currently still even doing, we realized that there was a huge part of a community who are non-speaking. And so whether you're non-speaking because you're an autist, right? So you just don't communicate verbally, or it could be a non-speaker because they have a stroke, right? And because of their stroke, they cannot really communicate, or sometimes it's because they're so overwhelmed that they cannot use verbal communication very effectively. And so if you have no speech, that also ties into access, right? Because you have to have communication. Communication is foundational. And so then we said, okay, well, what's available out there? Not a lot. It's not a very innovative space in that the communication devices are really archaic. They're very clunky. There's a lot of licensing around it. You have to be licensed. You have to buy it. You have to have money to buy it. And so it's a problem. And so we said, there's a gap, there's a need, how can we solve it? And so what we did was we created a talker that's now housed within the Culture City app, which you can get for free on Android or Apple. And it is AI based, it is cloud based, and it allows for rapid communication between the non-speaker and the person that they're communicating with. And so we took about a year to develop that. We had a John Kish Foundation in Salt Lake City. We pitched the idea to them, and they said, "Oh my gosh, this is it. We're gonna support you." They gave us the funds to do it, and we created it. And so now this communication app is free and accessible for anybody and everybody as long as you have a phone. And so we've always approached all the different things that we do
By
via
observing what their needs are.
via this pathway.
That's great. And I know Culture City has been so successful in bringing like celebrities like from and like really internationally,
Yes.
right? And I know that Culture City is in a lot of NBA arena and NFL stadium, right? From like a nonprofit in Birmingham to reach out to this much larger stage. Was there a point in you like when you reach out to the celebrities or like larger stadium? Was there ever like sometimes a doubt like, you know, are they going to say yes to the collaboration request? And tell us a story.
Yeah. It's very interesting because, so you said, tell us a story. I think stories are what connect us. Stories is what really brings people to the table. You know, we were a nonprofit in Birmingham for the first 2 years or so. And it was an incident that happened in Quicken Loans Arena, and where the Cleveland Cavaliers were doing, you know, if you remember when LeBron was there with the finals, and so it was a really hot city, hot town, and there was an incident that happened there where a child went through the security, and because he was a non-speaker, he had a vest on him that was his talker. Now, security didn't really understand what that was. And this happened actually on an autism night of all nights. And so the security didn't really understand what the function of the speakers were. And so, you know, took it off him. And it became a really pivotal moment, I think, in this movement because, you know, that child, it was as if his voice was taken away from him. And we were in Birmingham at that same time, and then this incident happened in Cleveland, and because of it, and there were other, you know, series of events that sort of connected us. But the short of it is that we were then able to go there, and it actually happened right after New York City Marathon. I'll never forget it. I ran New York on Sunday, and then Monday so New York flew out to Cleveland. And we did the training with them. So they became the very first NBA team and stadium that we trained. And Quicken Loans Arena is also very special because they were the first sensory room that we built there in 2017. Now, once the training, so what, you know, the training is really about educating the community, the arena, the player. I mean, everybody that touches a child or a guest for that matter, right? About how do you engage with someone with an invisible disability? How do you recognize when they're in need? How do you include them? How do you ensure that they have access? And so that story, that incident actually was the first sort of tipping point, I suppose, that brought Culture City from Birmingham into a national space. And then from there, it sort of just went. And I think it was in part due to the fact that, it's 1 in 4 that has an invisible disability. And so when you start talking about it and people start thinking about it, they're like, oh my gosh, it's my neighbor.
Yeah.
It's my friend. It's my colleague,
Yeah.
right? It's my coach. It's my teacher. You start thinking about all the people that it actually touches. And if it's not in your family, obviously, if it's in your family, it's immediate. It's like, oh my
Right.
gosh, it's my child. And so the need is there. And so when people hear of what we do and how it's really not just transform, I think, the way we can participate in life as a family or as an individual, but how businesses can operate, right? How can we rethink our economy? How can we rethink our businesses where what we do is good for the people we serve, but honestly, it's also really good for their businesses. So think about it this way. Stadium's a great example. We have families who will write to us and say, I intentionally went to Stadium A and not Stadium B because Stadium A had the resources and Stadium A understood me and welcomed me. And so once the industries understand this is actually really good for my business, why am I not doing it?
Right, yeah.
We then have the opposite effect of what you were saying, which is them reaching out to us. And that's how Culture City has always been. It's very grassroots. I mean, you see this, like we don't do traditional marketing. We don't have ads. It's really about stories and about how it touches people and how people realize that, you know what, I want to be better and I want our world to be better. And this is how we do it. We can only do it if we do it together.
Yeah, because you are really fulfilling the needs out there. I think that statistics 1 out of 4 individual having that's so powerful because I think a lot of times because this disability are invisible, we don't really get to perceive it like this so widespread. I really like the part where I was listening to Dr. Julian Maha's presentation, the Rotary Club, where he said like have everybody stand up.
Oh,
And then
yes.
he names 3 questions like if you know people who have autism, then you can, if your answer is yes, you can sit down. And everybody closed their eyes and they would sit down when they actually that apply to the people they know. After 3 questions, everybody sit down.
Yes.
I mean, it's just really widespread.
Yes.
I also really like the story he mentioned that how Coldplay reached out to you instead of you reaching out to them. Because a mother was writing a letter to them, say, hey, I want to take my kids to see your concert, but I can't.
Yes.
And the mother write the letter like in, many, many days.
Yes.
And then finally Coldplay reach out to you instead of you reaching out to them. I think that's great because you are serving unfulfilled needs. I want to kind of pivot a little bit, not really pivot, but this is the endurance podcast, and Michelle is an endurance athlete. We chatted just a little bit before the podcast started. You said you run about 25 to 30 marathons, and you also done a lot of ultra marathon. That's 100-mile and Ironman. That's a lot. Can you tell us a little bit how did you decide that this endurance sports is your thing?
I think endurance sport chose me rather than I chose it, I think.
Did you grow up like a very fit
Oh
kid?
gosh, no. This is so funny. I think back to a really dear friend of mine, Regina. She was in medical school with me and she's a runner. She was a runner. I think she still is a runner. And I would go for runs with her in medical school and I hated it. I would run less than a mile. I'm like, I'm done. Peace. I'm going back. I would play sports, like I played squash and badminton and things like that, but I hated running. I never understood running and it was not my thing. So I never ran ever, like not even 5Ks. But I think it was around the same time, when Abram was diagnosed so it was 2015, around beginning of 2015. I'll never forget that moment. It was beginning of 2015 and I was just going through a really difficult time in my life in sort of finding the balance of, being a mom, and Abram was going through what he was going through in, establishing myself as a physician scientist and And then my mom passed away, and it was a really really dark time in my life. I think I don't know if you've ever had this moment, but it was one of those where you know how you feel so squashed and you want to tap out, like somebody tap me out, but nobody can tap you out, and you feel just completely hopeless, like hopeless. And then again, I'm very fortunate because I have a great family and I'm very well loved. But even with the amount of love that was surrounding me, I was not in a very good place. And so I don't know what it was about that morning in 2015. I I don't even have running shoes. I wear Converse all the time, and so I just put on my Converse, and this was like 5 something in the morning I don't remember the exact time, but I knew the sun wasn't up yet, and I just drove to Jameson Trail. It was the only trail I knew that existed. I was like, I just drove there. I don't know what made me do it. I just drove there, and I started running, or in my mind, I was running, but it could be a jog. It could be, who knows? I was moving. Let's put it that way. I was moving. And so it was really cathartic. I remember I was running and I tripped, and I still have the scars. I tripped and I was bleeding everywhere, like my leg, my arms. And there was something about that movement, and just, it was so cathartic. I was just crying in a way, like I don't cry, but I was crying in a way that I couldn't even stop the crying. And then the sun was coming up, and the birds, I could hear the birds, and you can hear the forest. I mean, it's not a forest, it's Jameson Trail, but you can hear nature. And I could hear the water, and there was something so beautiful about that moment that I just never stopped after that. That's what got me into running, and I just never stopped.
That's actually very relatable to me. I mean, today is not my podcast, and then one day I want to share the story of me starting running.
Yeah.
But I can totally see that. I've run in like really downpouring rain,
Yeah.
and being to cry, nobody able to see that, but
Yes.
finish it feeling great,
Yeah.
like feeling like so
Yeah.
strong, like. In despite of all the hard things
Yeah.
happening to me, I
Yeah.
can still do this powerful move that's
Yeah.
running.
Yeah.
So I can totally see that.
Yeah.
So you conceived the idea of KC Fit, KultureCity Fit,
Yes.
during the marathon
Yes.
in 2016 in Boston.
Yes.
Can you tell more about that story?
That's actually with a really good friend, Tiki Barber.
Like how does Michelle just randomly run down the street with
Tiki
Tiki Baba?
Barber, yeah. I actually just spoke with him yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, he's one of my very dear friends. I love him. We ran all of our initial marathons all together, and then the last few, because of his sports part, responsibilities because of games and things,
Yeah.
it never aligned, so he couldn't. But so that story was it's actually pretty neat. So that was the year that KultureCity won top 10 nonprofit with John Hancock. And if you remember Boston Marathon, prior to, in the past, John Hancock was one of their main sponsors.
Okay.
And so we won top 10 nonprofit with John Hancock, and it was really special because we were from the state of Alabama and city of Birmingham, and here we are on a national platform. And soon after that, we got a call. And you have to remember, I just started running at this point, right? I don't know much about running. Certainly didn't know too much about Boston.
Hopefully, you are not wearing your Converse shoes
No,
anymore.
but by now I'm wearing running shoes. But I knew enough about Boston to know that if Boston called, I should say yes. And so we got a call that said, "Hey, we would love for you to be at the Boston Marathon. We have 2 bibs. Please come." Now, this was very close to April. And so we had about 8 weeks leading up to this race. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should say yes. And then I was like, well, who am I going to ask that's going to do this crazy thing in 8 weeks that will say yes? And that only person that I knew, I didn't know any running people much, but I was like, Tiki. And so I called him. He's like, where are we going? And I told him the story. He's like, sounds like a good idea. And so we did it. Both our family, Tracy, Tiki's sweet wife came, and his daughter came, and Julian came, and so we were like, okay, let's see how this is gonna work out.
And that was your first marathon.
So we ran, and oh my gosh, by mile 20, we were both just like dying and suffering. We're like, this is not a very good idea. Nobody should run this untrained. But the beautiful thing that came out of it though was we then started talking about all the families that, that we've connected with. And, Tiki was connected to us via his friend who has a child with autism. And that's how we initially got connected as well. And so we started talking about all these individuals and families, and we started naming them. And it was so beautiful to be able to think, the only reason why we're doing this was really to spread the message of Culture City and to really use it as a platform. And that became the beginnings of Culture City Fit. After we crossed the finish line, we said, we should do it again. Right before we were like, oh my God, this is so crazy. We're dying. But then when we finished, we were like, that wasn't too bad. We should do it again. But this time we should do it where we have a team and we have people that runs for Culture City because we realized that running is such an equalizer, right? It really doesn't matter who you are, what you do. It doesn't matter if you're fast or slow. 26.2 mile is a distance to be respected. Fast or slow doesn't matter. The pace really doesn't matter. It's about how you yourself handle that distance and the journey of getting to the start line and the journey to the finish line. And if you tie that in with, I'm not just running for my time, I am running because I understand and I see Johnny or Sam or, Alexander who cannot do this, and I'm doing this as a way to tell their story, to raise funds so that they can do this as well, and they have the opportunity. And that's very powerful. And so that year itself, we said, okay, let's have our first team. And our first team was New York City Marathon 2016 in November. And that was the beginnings of Culture City, KC Fit.
KC Fit, yeah. And I also wanted to mention that there are actually like group that bring people with invisible disabilities such as autism to these races. I have friends who were guiding people with disability through these races. And like you said, I think you said it really well, that sports is an equalizer. And we wanted to, support people with disabilities to be able to enjoy the sports. And in 2018, you did a 100-mile ultra. Is that 2018?
I think maybe 2019. I don't know. You might be right. I lose track of time. Somewhere there.
Okay, somewhere there. And you decided to go. But from marathon to 100-mile ultra and Ironman, tell us a little bit about your training and the decision going into it. And then just share some more about when you are going through the race. Because for me, my longest distance is marathon and half Ironman. I still cannot imagine taking up that much of training and the race itself.
Running is special, I think. It's really one sport that can emulate life in the sense that there are so many things that can happen that is totally unexpected. Whether suddenly you tweak your ankle or your fueling is not right and your body doesn't feel right, or various different things can go wrong. But running is a sport and a space where it forces you to be able to think and adapt and control your environment, even though it seems not like in your control. And the longer that distance is, the more opportunities you have for things to go wrong and for you to figure out who you are as a person. How are you going to navigate this problem and how are you going to come out of it ahead of it? Right. And so I've always loved that about running, and I've always loved the endurance part of it, because to me, it also allows me to completely disconnect, because when I'm running, I'm disconnected, especially if I'm like in the trails, I'm completely disconnected. But it also allows me to, I think it's such a great simulator of life in a sense, right? That's within somewhat control.
You have to problem solve.
Somewhat control.
You cannot go out too fast.
Yes.
It's really like real life.
Yes. It's about I mean, think about it. It's really about, especially endurance sports that's long, right? It's about managing expectation,
Yeah.
right? It's about managing fuel. It's about fuel efficiency. It's about, it's so many neat things that you can learn from being on your feet for a long time. But for me, it was, I didn't go from 26.2 miles immediately to 100 mile. I knew that I wanted to do 100 miles. So the way I did it was, I think this was 2017. Yes, it was 2017 because yes, and so that year, I did a few marathons. I did one every couple months, with the last one being a 50 miler, and I think that was my first sort of endurance
Ultra.
ultra. But then from a 50, then I said, okay, what's the next distance? So from a 50, I went to 100K. And then from 100K, I went to 100 miles. So I didn't immediately go from 26.2 to 100. So I did a 50. And I think a few months later, or the next year, I did 100K. And then a few months later, I did my 100. And then the Ironman, which is very different because that's more endurance in terms of swim and biking. And
Right.
then a 26.2 mile marathon. That was a few years ago.
Yeah. I was talking to one of your employee at the KultureCity. I was talking to Sean Lin, and we chatted a little bit, and he was like, Michelle is special in this way that when she wanted to go, like, practice swimming, she will find a swimming camp in Arizona, and she would just fly out there and have a week of training and then come back. It feels like you really just know, for whatever opportunity out there that you think is fitting, you would just go and grab it.
Yeah.
What give you that?
Okay, so it was in DC and definitely not a week. Oh my God, I would love to be able to unplug for a week. No, it usually so that's the swimming thing is true because I'm a terrible swimmer. My friends know this. Liba is my dear friend, and I'm like, Liba, teach me how to swim. I'm terrible. If this gives you a sense, so you swim, so you will understand this. When I swim a lap, when I first started, like literally one end to the other end, it took me a minute. Like I'm so inefficient that people are lapping me, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm still here. What in the world? I am not good at it. But because I knew that Ironman was my goal,
2.2 miles
and
of
I had
swimming.
and I had to swim 2.2 miles in a given period of time,
Right.
what I was able to do is not good enough. It's not going to cut it, right? So I needed help, and so I flew to DC, and I would swim there, and then so DC is great because it's a direct flight. You can fly there in the morning, you can fly back in the afternoon. So that's what I would do. I fly there in the morning, and then learn how to swim, and then fly back. It's the same day, not a week. Sadly, not a week. But that was I needed it because if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be able to have done the Ironman because I didn't have the skills to do it.
Yeah.
And then after that, it was a matter of then implementing the skills that I've learned and things like that.
Number one, we need to find Michelle a swimming coach in Birmingham. Number two, I think I'm just so impressed that, most people would say, oh, I can't swim, therefore I'm not doing triathlon. But Michelle's like, I can't swim, but I'm going to find a coach in DC. I'm going to fly over there. In one day I'm flying back, and then she's going to teach me how to swim. And I'm going to do 2.2 miles of swimming. So I'm very impressed by that. And then I wanted to ask this question because you do a lot. You are ICU pediatrician. You're saving lives out there in the hospital, and also you have research. You have this nonprofit. You also publish books with your son.
Yes.
You are doing, on top of that, you're doing all the sports. Like everything you do, you seem to do them to an extreme. You want to excel in everything you do. And then on top of that, you are a great friend.
Oh, thank you.
I talk to a lot of people who surround you. I know a few people that are good friends and run with you every now and then. And I myself know because I remember was maybe back a year, 2 years ago, I had a friend who has a child have selective mutism. I was running with you. I was telling you that this friend lives near to Boston. I say, hey, Michelle, do you know a doctor in Boston area that you can connect her with? You immediately reached out back to me and say, I wanted to help. Like we don't really, spend a lot of time together, and you even offered help. And I talked to Allie, and she's like, Michelle's great. She's so thoughtful. If I mentioned that there was some problem with my wrist, there will be flower waiting for me at home. And I just wanted to know how Michelle can do all this but still show up for friends. And I also wanted to say that I actually reached out to Mayor's office. I said I wanted Mayor to comment not the stats of Culture City, because we all know Culture City is making a huge impact to the city, but more of who Michelle is as a friend. And I wanted to play this voice clip. I do want to preface this because I'm very grateful that Mayor's office responded to me very quickly. Last week was Magic City Classic.
Oh, wow.
His office is quite overwhelmed.
Yes.
But when I reached out to them, they responded very quickly.
Oh,
so
wow.
can we play that clip, Ronnie?
Michele Kong is the true essence of a friend. Devoted, loyal, intentional, and very, very thoughtful. I thought I knew all of those things and what they meant until I met Michele and how she's shown up for my wife and I. Michele, we love you.
That is so sweet.
I think because you're...
Oh my gosh. Thank you for doing that. That is so sweet.
I kind of hate to put you in the spotlight, but back to my question.
What was the question?
How can you do all this and still show up for your friends?
Because they show up for me.
Is there any time Michelle felt like, I'm just having too much, I have to say no to something? What give you that you always prioritize the work, you also prioritize the relationship? How did you manage to do that?
Yeah. I actually say a lot of no's. I think for me, whatever that I do, it has to be something that drives me and that is truly important to me. And so whatever you see that I do fits that criteria. And there are certain things that people will ask me to do, whether it's at work or whatever it is, that I will say no to, because I know that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to give it my all.
Yeah.
So if I know that I cannot give you my all, then I will say no, because I don't want to give you something that is subpar. And so I think I'm also just very fortunate in that I am surrounded by really incredible people, very like-minded, good-hearted. And as much as I show up for them, it's like I said before, they show up for me in different ways, I'll share one little story, and this recently just happened. We were at a very public place, and it was a very difficult time. Abram was getting a little bit overwhelmed, and I was struggling. But somebody, a total stranger, came up to me and just looked at me and said, "It's fine. It's okay." That's all he said. But that was enough to, I think I almost cried again, but that was enough to bring comfort to me in that moment, to know that it is okay. And I want to be that for others as well, because I think at the end of the day, we're all humans. We have really hard times, and sometimes really good times, and sometimes really hard times, and you just never know. You when someone is maybe seemingly not there, or maybe said something wrong or did something wrong, you never know what they're going through. Maybe they're going through the worst day of their lives. And so before we say something that's harsh, always come to the table with a little bit of, with a lot of kindness and empathy.
Instead of judging, try to lift each other up.
Yeah.
I think that's so beautiful. And I'm so glad that with all the things you say no, you didn't say no to this podcast. I wanted to ask you, we learned so much about the invisible disability from Culture City, but how can we, all the listeners, do individually to help people, to help accommodate people who have invisible disability, to help accommodate their needs in our just daily life?
I think the first thing is just to know, right? And I think if you just always go with the principle of kindness and being open and understanding that we're all not the same, but that's okay. We experience life in a different way, and therefore that's also okay. I think that's the first key. I think the second is to know that, this is why we're here for Culture City. This is what we do. And if you have any, if you have schools, you have businesses, you have, restaurants that you frequently go to, and, you see the need there, tell them about Culture City, tell us about them, and then connect us with them, and we can bring the training to them. We can bring the resources to them. That's how we do it, one family at a time, one restaurant at a time, one studio at a time.
And tell us about the upcoming Culture City race, half marathon and 5K races in downtown.
Yes.
How can people show up to support you?
That's a great one. So November 22nd, we will have our second 5K and half marathon in front of the steam plant, which is in between the Rotary Trail and Railroad Park, right across the street from Hero Donuts. So it's 18th Street and First Avenue South. And so it's going to be so fun and super great. The course is flat and it's fast.
Yeah.
The weather should be beautiful. So there'll be lots of PRs. But I think last year, what was really incredible to see was a lot of the folks that came out were people who are doing the first 5K and first half marathon ever. Yeah. They just said, you know what, let's try it. And if you want to try something, this is the environment to try it.
Yeah.
We will have our team out there to assist with any sort of accessibility need. There will be music. There'll be really great food. The prizes are incredible. If you're fast, you're in for some really amazing prizes. And it's just going to be lots of fun. So
There's going to be fried chicken there?
Maybe 7 o'clock. I don't think anybody wants to eat fried chicken except for me. Maybe.
This is great. I need to ask you. I was stalking you a little bit on your Facebook, and I came across this poem that you wrote to your son. Can I read it?
Sure.
And I think it's just so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So I have to read it, and I'm grateful that you allowed me to do this. A love letter to our son, Michele Kong. It was love at first sight. You are perfect in every way. But in a room so bright, I felt your future slip away. They said you have autism. For now, you no longer speak. You are at times so far away, seemingly here, but actually there. But I see love and light in your eyes. Your laughter quickens my heart. Your hug says I love you. Your touch speaks volumes. We dance and we move. We sing and we jump. To the clouds, here we come. In these moments, we are connected. There is a hope, my son, in today. There is a hope in your future. Your potential is there. Your story is untold. Run, my son. Reach for the sky. Climb that mountain, no matter the height. Your potential is there, your song unsung. With every valley, there is a peak. When there is a storm, a rainbow is near. We live not by what we see, we live by faith and hold on tight. It is still love at first sight. You are still perfect in every way. In the softness of the moonlight, I love you more today than yesterday. This is so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
This is our show, Michele, and I can't tell you enough how much appreciated you coming to the podcast and share your personal story. And I feel more connected with you, than ever before. I have some requests to listeners. If the story has moved you, sign for the race. I signed up for the 5K. So show up for the race to support Michele and to spread word about Culture City. It's Culture City with a K, and I'm going to share all the ways you can get connected with the show notes.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate this, and I'm so glad that we did this podcast like early on, this episode early on for this podcast. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow us, like us, spread the word, share with your friends. Until next time, I will see you. And this is your host, Sean.